think, one of the important things to understand as human beings is that, when you're talking about emotions, and you're listening to somebody, and you're saying, hey, this person, like, I don't remember that scenario being this way, now. And then you have this temptation to, like, interject yourself into that, as if it's meant to be a conversation. Well, when a person is talking about their feelings, oftentimes it's the case that they have not had the opportunity to really express these feelings before, because expression is something like, it's kind of like a creative, it's like a creative process. It's a creative art. So when we go to express ourselves, like, okay, so I'll give you a sort of an analogy here. So if I'm an artist, which I am an artist, so this is a fitting analogy. If I go to draw a picture, and I've never drawn a picture before, and I try to draw a portrait of somebody, my first rendition that I've ever embarked upon is going to be not representative, particularly representative of what is actually there. So that is because I'm not skilled yet. I have not practiced this skill. So therefore, as I maneuver through this, as I approach this endeavor, with any sort of seriousness, I have to be comfortable with the reality that when I start out any sort of new endeavor, I'm going to be subpar when I start. But through faith of and having a clear vision of where I want to be eventually, my pictures are going to be more and more accurate and representative of what I'm trying to achieve artistically. So my point is, the same is true for any sort of verbal expression. And it can be very delicate process to, when you begin to voice your feelings, to other people, because all, goddamn, so many webs. For them, it's going to trigger emotions in them if they're not adequately processed themselves, if they have not adequately engaged with this process. So, what if you want to be somebody who's there for somebody else, it's important to learn to be a good listener without interrupting, and without thinking, hey, what they're saying isn't necessarily 100% accurate or factual. Because what you need to understand is right now it's not so much about expressing something factually. It's about learning a facility for expressing an emotion. And when we start out in this process, it's difficult at first. The person has enough difficulty on their own meeting this very challenging project of becoming a better communicator and becoming a more authentic human being through the expression of their emotions. So like, if the person is not particularly good at factually representing the things and events that happened in the past, then you don't take that as an opportunity to interject yourself and then, like, pretend like you're doing them a service by illuminating them and correcting them on what they're saying in a literal sense, because it's more important for them right now to gain trust with themselves as communicators, and to, it's an iterative process. Iteration means you do it a million times, and then you become an expert, then you become a master at this craft. And emotional expression is a craft that we need to develop. And it's unfortunate that we live in a world where we're not often provided with an environment of empathy to gain facility in this vital skill. Because how do we create a better world? How do we create good, long-lasting relationships that are deep and meaningful? It's by becoming amazing expressors of how the world has impacted us. We become, unbiased, more and more unbiased reporters of what is the actual experience that we're going through. And we become magnificent listeners who can, not make even the slightest peep. Sometimes it's good to, say, yes, and stuff like that. But when someone is really going deep into like something important, when they're, putting the emotional snapshots that they've taken in their history and finally putting them into words, and they're making this courageous act of sharing something, very vulnerable with you, that is an opportunity to become a great listener. And to, even if you feel this sort of sudden urge to be like, this makes me uncomfortable, I want to argue with them, don't do that. Don't be that person. I'm not saying, you have to be perfect. Sometimes we all make mistakes, and becoming a good listener is also, a craft in itself. And so like, it's the intention that matters. So like, if you want to be a good listener, learn to listen without interruption. And then, if you do sort of fail, come short on that aspect of it, just keep in mind, okay, I failed a little bit here, but I want to continue to move forward in this. So, don't get caught up in being too hard on yourself if you've failed. And equally, if you're trying to express and you feel like you've somewhat misrepresented something, don't make it all on you to be like, don't like suddenly accuse, oh, I'm a liar, I'm a terrible person for not, expressing all sides of, equally, and being totally objective and factual. Just remember that you're in training right now, and you're moving towards a goal. And it's like, yeah, when you approach the goal at the beginning, it's going to be, less perfect, and it doesn't need to be perfect in that sense. Doesn't the perfection is within the courage, to do something new, to challenge yourself. So, this is sort of my message for today. I think, being a good listener is very important. Being a good communicator, practicing communication, highly, highly undervalued. Both of these things are undervalued in today's world. It's like most people, only ever, swim at the shallow end of the pool when it comes to, accurately describing what is going on in their lives and in their family lives and in the relationships that affect them daily. Because it's so tempting to instead of like, develop a relationship of like, okay, you listen to me for a while, now I listen to you for a while, uninterrupted. People are not really trained to have this sort of, and it's really simple, once you learn how to do this and to not be reactive and like constantly trying to say, oh, this person needs to, take the high road while I take the low road because I won't do it until they do it. Well, if that's your attitude, then probably it's going to take you a while to either be in enough pain to realize that, it's the responsibility is on you to make your relationships work. So if you're in a shitty relationship and, you feel like it's run its course, maybe start a new one. Or it could be, if you're in a shitty relationship, you haven't tried, sort of being a better listener, being more patient, and not reacting to every little kernel and opportunity to, seek vengeance against the person that you're supposedly, sharing a relationship with, whether it be your parents, your loved significant other, or your siblings, or your friends. These are all, we have these names for these different relationships, but are they are they just people in your lives that are there for you to, let your shadow out, and sort of like, because you've reached a certain level of comfort and they've become like your captive audience, that now that it's okay for you to, be abusive toward them and to just sort of unleash, even, and even if it's true that, they've done sins against you, it doesn't absolve you in any way whatsoever, because what you're doing is you're sending the energy out and then it's coming back to you. And whether or not, the other person started it or you started it, what's important is, are you going to be the one who's going to take charge of your life? Because if not, you're basically going to be at the mercy of whatever the waves are that are going through, the world. In Hinduism, this is sort of called karma. Karma is neither good nor bad. It's simply the, perpetual motion of the universe, essentially. So, do you want to become awake and conscious in your life and start taking responsibility for yourself and your relationships? And, by, sometimes allowing these uncomfortable feelings to pass, we all of a sudden we realize, oh, okay, I can deal with these. I can deal with this. I can deal with these, powerful feelings. It doesn't mean that there's something being damaged inside of me. It just means that there's like information inside of me that is unresolved, and is in the process of being integrated, essentially. So, yeah, anyway, yeah. Yeah, that's my, this has been my sort of daily exercise in expressing myself. I hope some of this is going to, perhaps land in the imaginations and the minds of, people out there. I'm gonna keep talking on these, similar subjects. Probably going to, repeat myself many times, because this is not really so much, what I'm doing here is not so much about me trying to, create, quality content, so, or whatever, like, this is really just about me practicing, for my own mental health, expressing my thoughts and feelings, because, how am I going to get better at it if I don't, find an avenue to do so? And, I'm currently, I have a good friend who's helped me for many years, express myself honestly. And, sometimes, him and I have gotten pretty wild with each other. And it's really great to have somebody in your life who you can be, very passionate with in terms of communication, and then still feel like, okay, they're still going to be here at the end of the day. So, if you want that kind of person in your life, I would highly recommend to be that person who can be that way for somebody else, who can have the waves crash against them and not be, in such a state of fear that, it means that, something negative is going to happen if you don't just sort of allow the other person to discharge emotions. So anyhow, that's where I think I'll leave it for now. You guys have a good one. I love you. See you again soon.